The day my brother died, his dropout notice also arrived at our home. My mother suffered a sudden heart attack, and my father was involved in a car accident on his way back. Meanwhile, Wenru, my brother's infatuated admirer, was carelessly boasting in a bar about a drama where two men fought over her. Carrying a fruit knife, I rushed into the bar, and the moment I stabbed at Wenru, time reversed. I returned to my second year of high school. Back when my brother was still the top student and the cool, handsome guy everyone admired, nothing had yet happened. It was just a moment of dizziness. The chaotic noise of the bar turned into the sound of the school bell. My body still held the posture of wielding a knife, but what I had in my hand was a black pen, which was now poking into another student's uniform. It was Joe G, the acknowledged bully of the school and one of Wenru's many admirers. On the day of the incident, for Wenru, he and a group of people cornered my brother in an alley and beat him. Eventually, my brother died from stab wounds inflicted by one of the thugs. The forensic report stated he was stabbed through the chest. Joe G simply said afterward, "I didn't know he would bring a knife." And as the son of a high-ranking official, he managed to clear his name completely. He glanced down at the pen cap sticking into his uniform and then back at me, his expression unreadable. Just coldly, he asked, "What's the matter?" The images of my brother's body, my mother's cries, and my father, whom I never got to see one last time, pounded at my temples. I stared at him fiercely, struggling to keep my trembling hands under control to avoid lunging forward and strangling him. Joe G's brows furrowed. He was about to say something more when the teacher's reprimand quieted everyone down. "What's the commotion at the back? Class is starting," as if awakening from a dream. I looked around and instantly saw, standing next to the teacher on the podium, a girl, Joe G, Jiang Yan. "Return to your seats. Let me introduce to everyone, the new student who transferred to our class this semester, Wenru." I walked back to my seat like a zombie, noticing the many gazes fixed on Wenru. She was pale, slim, and her features were exquisitely beautiful. The sunlight streaming onto the podium elongated her elegant figure, with a smile on her lips and a sly glint in her eyes. She completed her introduction and was directed by the teacher to the empty seat next to me. It wasn't until she methodically performed the actions I remembered from my memories, walking towards me under everyone's gaze and cheerfully saying, "Hello," that I truly believed I had traveled back in time. Back to the start of my second year in high school, the time when Wenru transferred to our school, marking the beginning of all misfortunes, in the days to come. She would be revered as the school beauty for her enviable looks and her gentle demeanor, entangling herself with my brother and winning a place in his heart. From being the unattainable dream of many boys, she became the deep mark on my brother, Jiangheng, and my brother, who lay in a pool of blood, became her proudest trophy, the one who fell from grace for her, descended from the pedestal for her, and ultimately died for her, compared to my initial admiration and joy when I first met her. This time, I merely glanced at her, holding my head up, looking into her eyes. I gave a half smile. "Please guide me well." Indeed, it was time to guide her properly. In the classroom, Wenru was fiddling with her bangs using a palm-sized mirror, while I stared out the window, lost in thought. I was originally the type of student who immersed myself in my studies, oblivious to everything else. Even though Jiang Heng's grades were excellent, I always left him behind, returning to my second year. I only needed a glance to reinforce what the teacher was explaining. For that reason, when I first learned that Jiang Heng had started dating, I was merely curious and gossiped a bit without making a big deal out of it. After all, it was the typical pairing of the most attractive boy and girl at school, which was hardly controversial. Even when he picked up smoking and drinking from Wenru and his grades began to decline, I inwardly scoffed at the idea of love turning someone's brain to mush. Thinking it would not end well, prophetically, Jiang Heng died. On our 18th birthday, my mother mentioned that he was born just a minute before I was. That day, he made his last phone call to me. He said he had waited in line for an hour to buy my favorite Kolomi series cupcake. By the time I arrived at the scene, Jiang Heng's body had already been taken away. In that alley, apart from the toppled cupcake, there was also a bunch of Star of Bethlehem flowers, trampled and dirty. Those were my favorite flowers. In this world, countless people are dizzy with love, some confused, some mad, but it shouldn't lead to death, and it definitely should not have been my brother. Fate has given me a chance to start over, to change the fragmented fate of my family. I want to pull my brother Jiang Heng back from the abyss, back to his vibrant and flourishing 18-year-old self. When the class bell rang, people crowded around Wenru and me at our desk, all there to curry favor with her. I was squeezed between Wenru and her adoring fans. Joe G, in particular, leaned over my desk, reached across me to tap on Wenru's desk, and said in what he thought was a cool, casual manner, "Shall we have lunch together?" I couldn't help but roll my eyes at his slickness, silently cursing idiot. In my heart, the next second, Joe G's cold gaze landed on my face. I didn't bother to ponder what he thought after seeing my eye roll. Nor did I care if I had offended him, I had more important things to do. I stood up, forcefully made my way through the crowd, and headed towards the neighboring class where Jiangheng was, standing at the doorway of class 1. I constantly shifted my gaze searching for Jiangheng. Suddenly, a familiar, cool voice came from behind me, looking for me. Turning around, I saw Jiangheng holding a water bottle, lazily raising an eyebrow. I had never looked at him so intently before. This Jiangheng was alive, his short-sleeved school uniform wrapped tightly around his growing frame, the top 2 buttons neatly fastened, leading up to his prominent Adam's apple and sharp jawline, his silhouette cast by the sunlight completely enveloping me. Seeing that I remained silent, he frowned and waved his hand in front of my face. "What's wrong?" My eyes watered, and I quickly rubbed them before looking up again, tears streaming down my face. "Brother." I suppressed the urge to hug him. Opened my mouth, but my throat was so tight I couldn't speak. Jiangheng, shocked, hesitated for a moment before wiping my tears away with his cool fingertips. He then changed to a gentle, serious tone. "Tell me, what happened?" I grinned, an uglier expression than crying, and managed to choke out, "It's nothing, let's go home early tonight. I miss mom and dad." Jiangheng laughed. "What are you, in kindergarten? You still haven't grown up." Then, he put one arm around me comfortingly. "All right, we'll leave right after school." After making sure there was nothing unusual with Jiangheng, I felt a huge relief and briefly spoke with him before turning to head back to class. However, as I turned around, Wenru came up with a smile. "Deskmate, I was actually hoping you could accompany me to the office." She hung onto my arm affectionately, winking at Jiangheng behind me. "Is this your boyfriend? He's so handsome. Can you bring me along to play next time?" I glanced back at Jiangheng. He frowned and looked at me with a puzzled expression. Clearly shocked by the term boyfriend, I gave him a smile, turned my head, and said expressionlessly to Wenru, "No, you can't. My brother doesn't like girls who are too overpowering." As soon as I finished speaking, Wenru's expression turned as if she was constipated. She bowed her head almost imperceptibly and sniffed herself to check for any odd smells. After confirming that there was no strange odor on her, she curled her lips, her expression cooled, but her words still showed a hint of weakness. "Jiang Yan, today is my first day at this school, and I hope we can get along well. If I have offended you in any way, please tell me directly instead of attacking me for no reason." Her expression was sincere, her words polite, and her demeanor neither servile nor overbearing, like a delicate white lotus shivering in the cold wind but still standing firm. I mimicked her demeanor with a sincere face and said, "Ah. What did I attack you for? You really do have a strong scent." I even winked at Jiangheng. "Brother, didn't you smell it?" Caught off guard, Jiangheng glanced at me helplessly and played along. "It does seem a bit, right? It's exactly like the scent of the aged green tea we have in the corner of our home." I looked at her with a grin. When Ru's face turned extremely ugly, tears even welled up in her eyes, and the light in her eyes when she looked at Jiangheng faded, her cheeks flushed. She turned around and rushed back into the classroom. Watching her retreating figure, I snorted coldly, unexpectedly receiving a light knock on the head from Jiangheng. He looked at me with a slightly critical expression, asking, "Why are you being so harsh with the new girl?" I took his words as instinctively protecting Wenru. Flashbacks of previous incidents triggered a wave of disgust in my mind, and my tone grew harsher. "What's the matter?" Feeling pity for her. "Then why did you just play along with me? If you feel sorry, go comfort her." Jiangheng's face showed surprise and confusion once again. After a moment, his expression darkened, and his voice lowered. "You're acting strange today. That girl's perfume was indeed a bit pungent. I was just stating the truth. If you feel wronged, tell me. But if you keep lashing out for no reason, then suit yourself." After speaking, Jiangheng turned to head back to class, adjusting my breathing. Just before the bell rang, I called out to his retreating figure, "I just don't like her. And if you end up liking her, then you are not my brother anymore." I returned to the classroom, dispirited. Since I can remember, Jiangheng and I rarely had such confrontational conversations. I was also aware that attacking Wenru relentlessly in front of Jiangheng was not the best strategy, especially since I was the only one who could see the whole picture. Originally, it was I who had pushed Wenru towards Jiangheng. When she first asked if she could join us in the future, I didn't hesitate to welcome her. From then on, she joined us for school, lunch, and day after day. The way Wenru looked at my brother grew stickier. She even started handling love letters from other girls for him, reading them to him in a sugary voice, watching his ears turn red, and occasionally saying something subtly flirtatious. Their outings on weekends became more frequent, and my brother's academic ranking started to slip, while I devoted myself entirely to my studies, thinking, let them be, as long as I performed well, the rewards from my parents would be greater. Back then, how could I have imagined this outcome? The bell for class rang. It was time for physical education, and the classroom was slowly emptying. I was about to grab a test paper and head to the sports field when I noticed someone sitting at my desk. Joji was idly flipping through my test paper, oblivious to my approach until I was right in front of him, and still, he didn't even lift his head. I reached out, pulled the test paper from his hands, and uttered coldly, "Stand up." Only then did Joji look up at me, his eyes filled with mockery. The top student, so aloof. I ignored him and repeated, "Stand up." Joji, now even less inclined to get up, leaned back, pressing against my backpack and laughed heartily. "I heard you're quite capable," even made the new student cry. "Is this how you want to get my attention?" I watched him silently for 2 seconds and then smiled. Yes, I actually enjoy seeing her cry. And even more when her sycophants start snapping at others in haste. Is there a kind of thrill in watching lowly creatures? Joji's expression suddenly turned cold as frost covered his face. He stood up abruptly, gripping my chin tightly, his hand exerting force. He stared at me, sizing me up with a strange look, and then, with a complex smile, he said, "Jiang Mian, it seems we weren't close enough before. I think, from now on, we should really get to know each other better." The next second, his hand was sliced by the utility knife I had grabbed from the table, causing him to release his grip in pain. I pushed him hard, making him fall back onto the chair, and looked down at him. "Sorry, I don't deal with idiots." Then, I picked up the test paper, took a pen from my pocket, and walked away. During the physical education class, I could feel Joji's sincerity in wanting to get to know me anew. Despite his injured hand, he was still imposing on the basketball court. Ignoring his occasional cold glares, I focused solely on figuring out the solution to the last and most challenging problem on the test paper. However, the basketballs frequently flying my way forced me to pay attention to the court. The last time, after scanning my surroundings, I subtly adjusted my position under the guise of tying my shoelaces. Joji's basketball flew towards me in a perfect parabolic trajectory, which I narrowly dodged by tilting my head. The next moment, a dull thud of the basketball hitting flesh, followed by a piercing scream, came from behind me. "Ah!" Several small groups of girls rushed to the source behind me, while the boys halted their running to look in my direction. The source of the scream, Wenru, was now holding her face, sobbing quietly. Almost the entire class gathered around, busy comforting the injured delicate flower. Only Joji stood a few steps away from the crowd, silently watching me. Seeing that I was also looking at him, he moved his lips, clearly forming the words, "Intentional." The girls had already started to vehemently take Wenru's side. "Which idiot threw the basketball? To fly this far is insane, should try for the NBA with that skill." It was definitely Joji. I saw him deliberately throw the basketball this way. Meanwhile, the boys, still somewhat defensive of their big brother, deliberately changed the subject. "Let's not talk about that now, let's get Wenru to the nurse's office. It was all just an accident." Joji, arms crossed over his chest and clearly looking upset, glanced at me with an ambiguous expression, then stepped forward to Wenru and said in a somewhat stiff voice, "I'll take you to the nurse's office." With her eyelashes still red from crying, Wenru gave a pitiful smile, looking very distressed. "No need, Joji, I believe it wasn't intentional. It doesn't hurt that much, let's not blame him." "Was that really not intentional? Can't you even say sorry?" "Exactly, just a moment ago he was sweet-talking someone else, and now he's putting on airs." The phrase, "it wasn't intentional," ignited a flurry of gossip among the girls, each remark hitting Joji like a stab in the spine. Finally, a furious "shut up" from Joji silenced everyone in the room. Wenru, startled, widened her eyes. Not understanding his reaction, Joji, cold as ice, simply ignored Wenru, bent down to pick up the basketball from the ground, and turned back to the court, followed by most of the boys. Seeing Wenru's disappointed expression and the fleeting shadow in her eyes, I couldn't help but sneer internally. She thought she was being clever by positioning herself as humble, hoping to evoke Joji's guilt and craft a perfect image of an innocent damsel to win favor. Little did she know, with Joji's personality, arrogant and dismissive, he would only apologize if he genuinely wanted to. Being morally coerced into apologizing was not something he would willingly do. His kindness towards women was merely an instinctive behavior of a male. If pushed into a corner, he would only grow tired and rebellious, just a typical proud and stubborn man. Wenru, failing to receive the apology and affection from Joji, decided not to pretend anymore. She swiftly stood up, appearing unbothered, and stared thoughtfully in Joji's direction, pondering something. After school, as I was packing my bag, Jiang Heng was already waiting at the door of our class. He leaned casually at the door, attracting attention from many. Despite his cool demeanor, Jiang Heng didn't possess a domineering aura. He relaxed his brows, smiled softly, and waved at me to come over. I slung my backpack over one shoulder and took one last glance at Wenru's empty seat before heading outside. Jiang Heng seemed in no rush to leave, leaning against the door and looking at me with feigned indifference. "What's up, aren't we leaving?" I urged. "I'm waiting for my sister." "Who are you?" he replied casually, still dwelling on our conversation from the morning. Realizing this, I nodded, turned, and said, "Then I'll go find my brother. Bye." That finally made Jiang Heng drop his act and follow me, taking my backpack from my shoulder to carry it himself. Then he slung his arm roughly around my neck. pulling me close into a tight embrace. His voice carried a hint of anger. So you're having issues with others, and you don't need your brother anymore. I don't even know that girl, and you're making up stories about me liking her. My heart sank slightly, taken aback. I had always feared that Jiang Heng in this timeline would repeat past mistakes, but I had overlooked his inherently aloof nature. Hesitantly, I asked, so, what did you think of her when you saw her? He seemed even more exasperated but answered obligingly, just an ordinary girl. His expression was sincere, showing no deceit. Wenru was far from ordinary, but Jiang Heng was never one to judge by appearances, having been approached by many women, including beauties, throughout his life. His calling someone ordinary meant that, for now, Wenru had made no significant impression on him. Relieved by his response, I relaxed completely, linking his arm. We hopped down the stairs just like we used to when we were kids, playful and carefree. Jiang Heng's anger subsided as we moved together, a moment reminiscent of simpler times. He teased me for being childish with a smile. However, as I was hopping around, I accidentally bumped into someone. Zhou Ji, holding a basketball in one hand and sweating slightly, stood in front of me. Apparently just after playing a game, he looked expressionlessly at Jiang Heng, then glanced at my hand intertwined with Jiang Heng's arm and said with a smirk, "Playing house, are you?" I instinctively tried to step in front of Jiang Heng, but he shielded me behind him instead. Jiang Heng smiled lightly and calmly said to him, "Sorry, classmate." He then tried to walk past Zhou Ji with me, but Zhou Ji reached out to block me, his tone icy. "Aren't you going to apologize?" On the back of his hand was a glaring wound, the very one I had inflicted that morning. Jiang Heng frowned, about to say something, but I spoke first with a sweet smile. "I'm sorry, brother Zhou Ji." Zhou Ji was taken aback, seemingly not expecting me to be so docile. A hint of mockery flashed in my eyes as I gently caressed his wound with my hand, then dug my nails deep into his flesh. The barely healed wound started bleeding again under my pinch. Zhou Ji's face twisted in pain, trying to shake off my hand, but I gripped even tighter. "Hurts, doesn't it?" "It's just a fraction of what my brother endured." Damn. As Zhou Ji was about to throw the basketball in his arms and raise his other hand, I let go, my eyes slightly downcast. I met his gaze, my eyes venomous, and whispered, "Brother Zhou Ji, be more careful where you walk in the future, lest you bump into me again." Perhaps because I made no effort to conceal my hostility, more than anger, Zhou Ji's eyes showed surprise and confusion. He couldn't understand why someone who had always been quiet, buried in her studies and hardly ever spoken in 2 years, harbored such intense resentment against him. I stopped looking at him and let Jiang Heng pull me away. Those actions were subtle, and Jiang Heng didn't notice anything unusual, only turned his head slightly in dissatisfaction. "Why do you call everyone brother?" Humming a tune, I felt cheerful and did not respond. Outside the school, near a nearby alley, I could distinctly hear some unusual noises emanating from it, cries, curses, and the clear sound of slaps. I frowned, sensing something was wrong. Jiang Heng and I exchanged glances, and he told me to stay put while he walked into the alley alone. How could I possibly obey? I followed him. The alley was long and narrow, its walls connected to many old, dilapidated standalone residential buildings. Following the noises, the sounds of laughter and crying grew louder. Finally, in the yard of an abandoned 2-story building, I saw Wenru squatting on the ground, crying, surrounded by several rowdy girls. Wenru's hair was disheveled, her face tear-streaked. The leader of the girls poured a can of soda over her head, the beverage dripping continuously through her hair. Her school uniform, shortened deliberately, soaked and clinging tightly to her body, revealing her shapely figure. The girls squatted in front of her, gently slapping her face and laughing loudly. "What are you doing?" Jiang Heng couldn't just stand by. He picked up a short steel pipe covered in cement from the ground and said calmly, "I've already called the police, they'll be here any minute." Wenru, like a drowning person clutching at a straw, staggered into Jiang Heng's arms and clung tightly to his waist, her face rubbing against his chest as she cried, like a frightened little rabbit. The girls, initially very arrogant, had their bluster significantly dampened. They looked anxious, repeatedly peering towards the corner of the alley, but it seems necessary under the circumstances. It seemed that she was genuinely afraid that the police would come. At last, the leader, a tough-looking older woman, pointed at Wenru and said gruffly, "You're lucky this time. Don't let me catch you again." After saying that, she hurriedly left with her group of followers. I stood behind Jiang Heng, watching this act of bullying with an expressionless face. As I quietly watched the leader, when she brushed past me, I gave her a grin and whispered, "Long time no see." She glanced at me, puzzled, and hurried off without saying much. Of course, I couldn't forget her. She was the girl who had laughed the loudest at the bar next to Wenru. Listening to Wenru boast about her Queen of the Sea experiences, Jiang Heng looked somewhat stiff as he comforted Wenru in his arms, gently patting her back and saying softly, "It's okay, don't be afraid, they're gone now." Wenru then looked up, her face still delicate despite being stained with tears, showing no signs of the red slap marks or even any swelling. She looked pitifully at Jiang Heng and asked, "Can you take me to the hospital?" Jiang Heng hesitated, then turned to look at me. I smiled broadly. Why go to a hospital? Just come to our place. It's nearby, we can check you over there. Jiang Heng was clearly surprised by my offer to take Wenru home out of goodwill, but he didn't say much, just as he didn't when he had rushed in like a hero earlier. Protecting the vulnerable is a natural duty for him, my brother. He could fulfill my minor requests, but interfering with his rescues would only lead him to be increasingly disappointed in me, as it turned out. Even if I kept my distance from Wenru in this timeline, she would still go to great lengths to design a chance meeting to get close to Jiang Heng. Along the way, Wenru clung to Jiang Heng as if boneless, either tripping over stones or taking dramatic falls on flat concrete. She occasionally let out sharp cries of pain, as if she was genuinely unable to walk. Finally, I stopped and said to her, "You seem very uncomfortable walking, how about I carry you?" I asked seriously. With no hint of impatience, Wenru looked awkwardly at Jiang Heng, expecting him to have offered, not me. Before she could respond, I had already turned around and bent down to crouch in front of her, before I could fully squat down. Jiang Heng grabbed the back of my school uniform and pulled me between him and Wenru, then pointed to a nearby medical supply store and said nonchalantly, "If you can't walk properly, we could buy a wheelchair there." Wenru was even more embarrassed and shook her head repeatedly, insisting she could walk fine. I was slightly surprised. I certainly didn't really want to carry Wenru. My earlier offer was just to make her lower her guard, after the confrontation earlier. Her impression of me probably wasn't too good, but why would Jiang Heng say something so harsh to a girl who had just been bullied? Before I could think further, I realized we had slowly arrived at the entrance of my residential building. I stopped, turned to Jiang Heng, and said, "Bro, you go ahead with her. I'm going to the convenience store to pick up some things." Jiang Heng asked, "What are you buying?" I casually replied, "We seem to be out of band-aids and alcohol at home." Without suspicion, Jiang Heng nodded and walked away with Wenru. I watched as their figures disappeared around the corner, then turned and entered a large digital mall. I headed straight for a well-stocked shop and got straight to the point. I need to buy a smart voice recorder, one with good battery life and remote control via mobile phone. The voice recorder was more expensive than I expected, but it seemed necessary under the circumstances. The device looks more like a mini, slim version of a smartphone. After the transaction was successful, I hurried to the convenience store to buy some alcohol and band-aids. Having done all that, I stood at my front door and rang the doorbell. There are surveillance cameras in the classroom, and it's easy to attract attention outside of school. If I wanted to safely and securely place the recording pen in Wenru's backpack, it had to be done at my home. Only Wenru was in the living room after Jiang Heng placed a medical kit and a glass of water on the coffee table. He went into his room. Wenru seemed a bit disappointed, but when she saw me return, she quickly rearranged her expression. I sat down next to her, smiling warmly. "I said some harsh things to you this morning, I'm sorry." Hearing this, she touched her hair near her ears and smiled tolerantly. "It's okay, I understand how you feel. It's normal to be afraid of someone taking your brother away. I often encounter this. I'm just friends with some boys, but their girlfriends really dislike me. I'm used to it now." As I reached to open the medical kit, a wave of nausea surged in my stomach, and I subtly changed the subject. But why did you get involved with those people just now?" Wenru looked somewhat helpless. "They were my classmates at my previous school. The guy they liked confessed to me, and they were jealous, I guess. I transferred schools because I couldn't stand the bullying, but they still haven't let go of me." As she spoke, her gaze shifted to my face. "What I really envy is someone like you. A simple and unadorned good student who doesn't attract much attention from the opposite sex and can focus on studying. Unlike me, I'm exhausted dealing with unwanted suitors every day." "Oh. I don't know why, even though there are so many girls at school, they still fancy me." I nodded and smiled, patting her leg without engaging further in the conversation. "You seemed uncomfortable walking just now. Let's check if there's any injury on your leg first." After saying that, I gestured for her to stretch her leg out on the sofa. Wenru was clearly reluctant. "Actually, I'm not really hurt. No need to check. By the way, where's your brother? Isn't he coming out?" I raised an eyebrow. "He's in his room. Should I call him for you?" Wenru smiled. "No need to trouble you. I'll go myself. I'd like to see what a boy's room looks like inside." I coldly chuckled, but nodded outwardly. Wenru tidied her hair to maintain a refined look and headed towards Jiang Heng's room. As her figure disappeared at the doorway of Jiang Heng's room, I quickly searched her backpack. The backpack wasn't empty, but there were no textbooks or exercise books, not even the homework assigned today. There were just a few romance magazines, a makeup bag, and some other miscellaneous items unrelated to studies. I placed the recording pen in a hidden compartment she wouldn't notice. Wenru came out much faster than I expected. She was only inside for 2 minutes and came out looking very pleased. Jiang Heng followed behind her, looking weary. "Classmate, if there's nothing seriously wrong with you, you should head home early." Jiang Heng's tone was polite but distant. Wenru sweetly said, "I was fine just now, but now I feel a bit uncomfortable." She looked at Jiang Heng bashfully. Suddenly, my heart is racing, my throat is tight, and I'm breathing rapidly. Jiangheng looked at me somewhat speechlessly, and I smiled slightly, walking into the kitchen to grab a kitchen knife. Rapid breathing, you might suffocate. You know, I've read a bit about cricothyrotomy. How about I sterilize and try making an incision in your throat? My kitchen knife is quite clean. Wenru's expression froze, clearly not expecting this turn of events, and quickly waved her hand saying it wasn't necessary. Before leaving, she cautiously looked at Jiangheng. Thank you for saving me today. Can I walk to and from school with you guys from now on? I'm afraid of running into those people again today. Jiangheng didn't respond, he seemed hesitant, and Wenru's words hit him right where it hurt. If he refused and something really happened to Wenru on the road, he would likely blame himself for the rest of his life. Thus, I didn't give him the chance to decide. Looking into Wenru's eyes, I spoke with a cold and firm tone, word by word, no, you can't. The air seemed to freeze for a moment, and a shadow of resentment briefly crossed Wenru's face. She bit her lip, remained silent for a while, and finally offered a sorrowful smile. At last, she turned to Jiangheng, her voice almost pleading, then, could you take me home? My house isn't far from here. Before Jiangheng could respond, I quickly took her by the hand with a smile. I'll take you home. 9. Wenru's home was indeed nearby, just across the street. We hadn't walked far when I noticed her spirits were low. A hint of mockery flashed in my eyes. I patted her shoulder. I'll head back first then. She ignored me, but suddenly called out my name, Jiang Yan. I stopped and looked at her. Her expression was no longer frail and innocent. With a cold gaze and a harsh tone, she said, it's pitiful how you scheme to keep me away from your brother. Men are all the same, they like beautiful and charming things. And you can't guard against this type of allure. I advise you not to pine for someone you shouldn't. After all, he is your own brother. Even though I was prepared, I couldn't help but laugh in astonishment. What, has she lost her mind? Wenru didn't respond further. Leaving behind a meaningful look before turning and walking away, I strolled home alone leisurely. Glancing up casually, I saw several girls across the street. They were in a group, their distinct hair colors and outfits making them quite conspicuous, the same girls who had surrounded Wenru earlier, and they were clearly heading toward Wenru's home. I quickened my pace, hurried home, entered my room, and took out my cell phone to activate the voice recorder. First, there was a faint rustling of static followed by the distinct clinking of glass. How did it go, Ru? Our act just now wasn't bad, right? This person sounded quite smug, Wenru snorted, followed by the sound of a glass being slammed down on the table. What good does it do to act well? Jiangheng didn't agree to any of my requests, and Jiang Yan, that wretched woman, is so paranoid about me stealing her brother, guarding him like crazy. Oh wow. It's rare for the Empress to encounter such a tough nut to crack. It's not bad to give you a bit of a challenge, otherwise, what's the fun if men flock to you just by a flick of your hand? But Wenru's tone was not as relaxed as the others. Don't talk without experiencing it yourself. After all the effort to stage a play, I still can't even get close to Jiangheng. It's just bad luck. And that Zhou Ji, I don't know what got into him today. Suddenly snapping at me without any of the loyalty you'd expect from a backup. The others comforted her. Don't rush it, Ru. It's only your first day of school. The most eligible bachelor at Z Middle School is worth the hassle. And succeeding in the end will feel even more rewarding. If all else fails, just resort to some unconventional means. I know the owner of Blossom Bar sells certain substances. Relax, Ru, we'll find a chance to teach that nasty girl a lesson. What's her name? Jiang Yan, right? After a while, I pressed the pause button. 10. The first Thursday and Friday of the school term were traditionally reserved for exams, having already completed my senior year. I was well versed in junior year knowledge and various standard question types. Even without specifically reviewing, I could easily handle the exam. Before the morning reading session, a girl approached me with a thin notebook of mistakes, smiling politely as she asked, Jiang Mian, could you help explain these questions to me? I looked up and saw it was Xiang Qiu, who sat towards the back of the class, had average grades, and liked to secretly read novels on her phone during less important classes. I nodded and agreed happily, then added one more question. Did you bring your cell phone today? During the math test, while everyone else was still furiously writing, I had already finished and was staring idly at the clock on the wall. Although I was zoning out, I could still catch Wenru looking over at my paper out of the corner of my eye, with a slight smirk. I subtly shifted my test paper a bit closer to her to make it easier for her to peek at my answers. A moment later, when the homeroom teacher walked away from the lectern passing by my seat, I put on a surprised and puzzled expression, and in a voice loud enough for the teacher to overhear, I said to Wenru, isn't it hard to copy like that? Should I just write it for you? Before Wenru could react, the homeroom teacher had already turned around and walked over to our seats, looking down at us. What's going on here? Wenru was quick to respond. I was just tired and looking out the window to rest my eyes. I shrugged helplessly. Maybe you should check the surveillance, teacher. I don't know what to say. The teacher stood there, pulled out his phone, and started checking the surveillance. After a moment, he collected Wenru's paper from her desk and said coldly, "Having a top student as your deskmate isn't meant for cheating during tests. You don't need to continue the exam, go stand outside and wait for your punishment." All eyes in the classroom turned to us, and when Rue's face turned pale with a mix of shame and anger, shooting me a fierce look, I gave her a radiant smile. Only when she stood up and walked out reluctantly did everyone turn their eyes back to their own papers, except for one gloomy gaze that remained fixed on me. The afternoon after the test was another PE class, used for rehearsal for a performance at the school celebration a week later. Our class had submitted a proposal for a ballroom dance. The teacher gave us 10 minutes to choose our dance partners, insisting on mixed gender pairs for aesthetics. Unsurprisingly, most of the boys, blushing, approached Wenru only to be met with her smiling and shaking her head. She was waiting for the most outstanding boy in our class. Zhou Ji stood with his hands in his pockets for a while before finally walking towards her, passing by Wenru without even noticing her astonished look. He stopped in front of me, he glanced down slightly, looked at me with drooping eyes, then extended the hand I had once injured, palm open. With a smirk and a hint of disdain, he slowly asked, "Miss Top Student, would you like to be my dance partner?" The surprised gazes of our classmates converged on us. As if unable to believe there could be any interaction between us, I pulled out a smile, though it didn't reach my eyes, and gently placed my hand in his. "Please, brother Zhou Ji, teach me well." He suddenly clenched his fingers, gripping my knuckles tightly. Painfully, I winced in pain but made no sound. After enjoying my pained expression, he finally loosened his grip, still smiling, but his eyes gradually turned cold. "I've seen your true colors now, crazy girl." During the music-filled practice time, Zhou Ji and I lightly held hands, exchanging dance steps back and forth. I placed my left hand on his shoulder, but he didn't wrap his arms around my waist as expected. Zhou Ji's face was expressionless, his gaze on my face enigmatic. After a moment, he finally spoke, "Do you really dislike me?" Looking into his eyes, I saw only murkiness. I masked my distaste, my lips parting slightly, my eyes innocently wide as I dodged the question. "Zhou Ji, why won't you hold me?" His eyes narrowed slightly, his tone casual. "If I don't hold you, will you not dance?" I replied calmly, "It's the rule. I don't want us both to be punished." He scoffed and turned his head away. "Such a good student." I flipped my right hand, interlocking our fingers and pulling his hand to rest on my waist. Zhou Ji's body tensed, his cool gaze fixed on me, though he made no move to pull away. As the melody soared, Zhou Ji's grip tightened. He led me in the dance, swirling around until, at the climax, he pulled me back, locking me tightly against him. Then, he straightened my chin, forcing me to look up at him, a slight smirk on his lips. "Though you're mad, you look much cuter now than when you bury yourself in your studies." I didn't resist, my expression unchanged. "You're hurting me." Only then did Zhou Ji let go, but not before flaunting a wound not yet fully healed. "Does it hurt? Remember, you're the one who gave this to me." I gently touched the wound, my fingertips caressing the surrounding skin, a light laugh escaping me. "It's quite beautiful." The skin had torn open, a rose-colored wound, indeed beautiful. "It's just a pity that the blade hadn't struck Zhou Ji's heart." With a complex expression, Zhou Ji withdrew his hand, his tone no longer cold but more like a murmur to himself. "Jiang Nian, you truly are mad." After school, I didn't pack up but sat at my desk, twirling my pen over a finished test paper. Jiang Heng waited for me by the classroom door as usual, holding several books. I got up and walked over leisurely. "You don't have to wait for me, go home first. I'll come after I finish my homework." Jiang Heng frowned. "Can't you do it at home?" Catching a glimpse of Wenru watching me from not too far away, I smiled. "Once I start on my problems, I can't stop, otherwise, I lose my train of thought." "Go ahead." Jiang Heng had no choice but to agree, rubbing my head firmly. "Be safe and come home early." He didn't spare Wenru an extra glance as he passed by her. In this timeline, my interference also affects Jiang Heng's judgment. Now, I no longer worry fearfully that Jiang Heng might fall for Wenru as he did in the past. However, those nightmare-like flashes from the past life, along with the recorded audio I had saved, kept reminding me that the wicked must pay a price. Not long after Jiang Heng left, I packed my bag, tapped Xiang Chou's desk, exchanged a look with her, and left the school alone. Sure enough, it wasn't long before a group of people began to slowly follow me, keeping a certain distance. As I reached a less populated area, someone suddenly grabbed me by the neck from behind. Then, a menacing crowd surrounded me. The one who had grabbed me was, of course, the gang leader from before. She laughed dangerously, whispering in my ear, "Little sister, didn't anyone ever tell you that classmates should help each other? Telling tales on your classmates to the teacher is a very shameful thing, you know." After she finished speaking, she grabbed my hair and dragged me into the alley. It was that abandoned residential building again. I stumbled into the open area, and when I looked up, when Rue was already standing there. Before I could steady myself, someone kicked the back of my knees, and I fell to my knees in front of Wenru, looking down at me. Wenru tilted my chin up with her fingertips. Jiang Yan, you must be quite happy today. You made me lose face in public, and then you flirted with Zhou Ji during gym class. Do you really enjoy slapping me in the face? How should I punish you? She chuckled softly, and someone yanked my hair back painfully. When Rue raised her hand and slapped me across the face, her long nails scratching a red mark on my cheek, followed by another slap. You should be kowtowing and begging for mercy. Upon hearing this, the gang leader pressed my head down forcefully, smashing my forehead against the ground mixed with gravel. Fists and slaps rained down on my body, causing immense pain accompanied by ringing in my ears. It hurt so much. Did my brother feel the same when he was beaten up in this alley? When Rue picked up a plastic can of drink from the ground, shook it, and poured it over my head, the coldness piercing to the bone. Struggling to lift my head, I looked at Wenru with a smile forming at the corner of my mouth. My lips moved. What did you say? When Rue raised her eyebrows and leaned in closer to hear me, I let out a muffled laugh from my throat. I said, your face is so ugly it's blinding. Her face twisted in anger, and she continued to slap me. Tired of hitting me, they started to strip off my clothes, and then took out a mobile phone, smiling brightly. I wonder what everyone would think if they saw our top student looking like this. My clothes were half torn when suddenly noises came from the alley. The gang girls cautiously stopped and looked outside, weakly lying on the ground. I gazed toward the direction of the noises, breathing heavily, yet feeling a rush of satisfaction. The gang leader kicked me twice more and then suggested to Wenru, let's not stay here, it's not safe, let's go to the old place. Laughter spread among the group again. I was taken to the Blossom Bar. The bar was noisy and dark, with only sporadic neon lights shining on my face, hardly drawing any attention. Even if someone noticed, it seemed to be just another usual scene. I was pushed into a booth, and when Rue sat beside me, lighting a cigarette, she smiled at the gang leader and said, didn't you say the boss sells that kind of drug? Go get some and let's test it on our little guinea pig. Understanding her hint, the gang leader left and soon returned with a small transparent plastic bag containing the drug. She patted my face. Open your mouth, uncertain of what the drug was. I kept silent and just stared at her coldly. The gang leader laughed dismissively and slapped my face. I fucking told you to open your mouth. When Rue sneered and pressed the lit cigarette onto the back of my hand, the searing pain made me scream in agony. Just as the gang leader was about to shove the pill into my mouth, a low, hoarse male voice reached my ears. What are you doing? I looked up and met Zhou Ji's eyes. Zhou Ji's appearance was unexpected, and the wet bangs scattered in front of my eyes hid the excitement in them. It was all too perfect. Zhou Ji had already taken off his school uniform, dressed casually in a baggy black t-shirt, topped with a baseball cap. His gang stood behind him, looking over with keen interest. I immediately recognized the thug who had stabbed my brother to death. Zhou Ji, when Rue exclaimed in shock, her face turning pale, Zhou Ji merely glanced at her before shifting his gaze to my face. His expression unreadable. After a moment of silence, he spoke in a cold tone, leave this guy to me. The gang leader was naturally displeased, and though she was annoyed, she could tell Zhou Ji was not someone to be trifled with. She patted Zhou Ji on the shoulder, brother, stay out of our business. As soon as she finished speaking, Zhou Ji grabbed her fingers and twisted them outward. The gang leader cursed in pain. Meanwhile, Zhou Ji's face remained stern as he gave a cold laugh. Who's your brother? When Rue quickly pulled the gang leader back, feigning composure as she addressed Zhou Ji. Zhou Ji, it was Jiang Yan who provoked me first, and my friend was just teaching her a lesson. We meant no harm. If you still want to play, this one's yours. Zhou Ji didn't even look at her and simply said one word, scram. When Rue and her gang left, and Zhou Ji came to sit next to me, he remained silent, and a youngster from the gang jokingly broke the silence, Brother Zhou. Who is this? A whistle sounded, and another person laughed. Who else could make Brother Zhou play the hero but her? Amid the teasing, Zhou Ji didn't even frown but looked at me casually, his eyes playful. He said sternly, any more nonsense, and you can scram too. The others wisely fell silent. I maintained calm eye contact with Zhou Ji, although my gaze didn't settle, and I kept an eye on the thug who had killed Jiang Heng. He looked ordinary but had fierce and sinister eyes. The rest were relaxed, drinking and smoking. Only he sat with a stern face, lost in thought. As I was still distracted, Zhou Ji's hand reached my face, forcing me to refocus. His fingertips slid across my cheek, tracing the distinct marks of a slap. Not very good at frenzying, are you? Look at the state you've gotten yourself into. His tone was mockingly playful. I smiled and lowered my lashes, placing my hand over his on my cheek, my tone slightly sarcastic. Are you going to avenge me? Zhou Ji seemed amused by the idea. Avenge you? What would you do for me? I didn't respond, just gently held his fingers. Zhou Ji didn't pull away, his gaze intense. Aren't you afraid I might ask for something excessive? I raised an eyebrow. How excessive? Want to sleep with me? Zhou Ji stiffened, his expression darkening, and he gripped my wrist in return. You really have a way with words, always surprising me. I had never really intended for Joji to avenge me. Realizing that staying here was a waste of time, I forcefully broke away and stood up to leave. Joji showed no reaction, and as I walked past the gang, someone grabbed my arm, smirking cheekily. Sister-in-law, leaving so soon? Why not stay a bit longer? I was about to shake him off when Joji's deep voice came from behind. Don't touch her. The man reluctantly let go. As I passed the thug, he was looking down at his phone. I quickly glanced at him without a trace. Other than having heavy dark circles, there was nothing remarkable about his appearance, and on his phone screen, the details show a transfer payment from a balance. The balance displayed is only a few dollars, however, it shows numerous large expenditures in whole numbers at different times. This person is clearly strapped for cash, at least for now. I didn't have time to look closely, as I locked eyes with the young punk, who looked dejected and emotionless, suppressing the urge to stab him. I turned away and left the booth. After leaving the bustling bar, I ignored the astonished looks from passersby and pulled out a cell phone from my backpack. I put on wireless earbuds and opened the app connected to the remote-controlled recording pen, and pressed the record button. The recording pen, which was tucked away in the backpack before when Rude discovered it, had already been retrieved by me, just moments ago, during the brief confrontation between Joji and the gang leader. I took advantage of the dim lighting to slip the recording pen back into a crevice beneath the booth's sofa. 14. Brother Joe, who was that girl just now? She looked quite innocent. It was an unfamiliar voice, still carrying a hint of sleaze. A lunatic, replied Joji. Damn, really? The vibe between you two earlier made me want to move to another spot. Didn't want to interrupt.
Ha! 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 Ha!
I walked slowly on my way home, patiently listening to some meaningless chatter. Finally, a different piece of information came through the earphones, in a voice hoarse and a bit frightening. Brother Joe, could you lend me some more money? At this, everyone fell silent, the atmosphere turning dead. After a moment, I heard the click of a lighter. Didn't I just lend you 20,000 last time? Joji's voice sounded emotionless. Yes, but my mom's really sick, and 20,000 is far from enough. Among all my brothers, you're the only one who can help me. I heard Joji snicker. 20,000 isn't enough. I'm afraid even 200,000 wouldn't be enough for your spending. Lisi, you know whether you're using the money for your mom's treatment or for gambling? Lisi's voice grew agitated. I'm not ing gambling. Then there was a loud crash of a bottle being smashed. Lisi, are you ing sick? Does Joji owe you anything? Yes, you're not gambling. So tell me how much you borrowed for gambling at those high interest rates, where the daily interest alone must be around 20,000. Your mom is almost dying in bed, and you can't even bear to buy her something decent. If it weren't for Joji continuously paying the hospital bills, your mother would have been in the grave long ago. What the F do you care? The argument was loud, almost painful to my ears. I stood at the base of my apartment building, turned off the recording, and the glass window of the security room reflected my face, disheveled and scarred, yet, I was smiling. A greedy gambler, under the right circumstances, can also turn into a deadly weapon. Although my home was on the 4th floor, it was a struggle to climb. Gasping for air as if the pain from the beating I received earlier was reconverging in my body, my temples ached, my head felt heavy, and I had to cling to the railing to keep from fainting. Standing in front of my door, I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Jiangheng opened the door, holding a glass of milk. Seeing me, he lost his grip, and the milk spilled all over, shattering the glass on the ground. Ignoring his astonished look, I sighed, wanting to go in and grab a broom to clean up the mess. As I passed him, he grabbed my arm, his hand resting on my shoulder. A hand trembling slightly touched my face, the voice choked up, unable to fully articulate the words. Xiaoyan, tell your brother what happened. I was too weak to resist his touch. I wanted to smile at him, but even that small gesture felt exhausting. Finally, I barely managed to whisper, brother, I'll be alright soon, before I passed out. The last thing I saw was Jiangheng's pale and bewildered face. At 15, I didn't know how long I had been unconscious, but when I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. Jiangheng was resting his head by my bed, seemingly asleep. I lay there, eyes open, quietly staring at the ceiling. Soon after, my mother came in, one hand filled with bags and the other holding a double-layered thermal bowl. Seeing me awake, she was both shocked and overjoyed, hurriedly placing her things on the cabinet beside my bed, but tears were already falling. Are you awake, darling? Do you feel discomfort anywhere? I obediently shook my head. Jiangheng was also awakened by the noise. He looked groggy at first, but quickly became alert and reached out to feel my forehead. Good, no fever. On the side, my mother was calling my father, telling him I was awake and complaining about how long he took to park the car. Jiangheng stared at me intently, His eyes filled with concern, he brushed the hair from my face, his voice soft. From now on, I won't let you go home alone. I blinked and gave a faint smile to show I understood. Tell me, who did this to you? As he spoke, his expression turned dark, a look I was unfamiliar with. I remained silent, just looking at him. After my mother finished her call, she rushed to my bedside, crying, Xiaoyan, tell mom, who did this? We've reported to the police and tried to check the surveillance footage on your way home, but there was a power outage in that residential area this afternoon, and they couldn't retrieve anything. I shook my head. Was it someone you don't know? I nodded. With no surveillance, there was no evidence. The only evidence was in my hands, and I couldn't just hand it over carelessly. Even after reporting it, it would likely be dismissed as just another case of school bullying. When Rue and those other girls were still minors, and the marks on me were superficial, not even qualifying as minor injuries legally, in the end, it would probably just result in a civil mediation or perhaps a letter of apology. Outside the hospital room, I heard my father's hurried footsteps. He slowed down as he reached the door, his eyes red as he looked at me. Seeing that I was in good spirits, he forced a grim smile. Our daughter has suffered. Let's have something to eat. Since I was not seriously hurt, I was discharged from the hospital that evening and went home. Before bed, Jiang Hang brought a cup of warm milk to my bedside, gently saying, it's the weekend, so just rest at home these next couple of days, and regain your strength before going back to school. I hummed in response. Jiang Hang didn't leave. He stood by my bed, his expression solemn, the room almost deadly silent. I was puzzled. What's wrong? He leaned closer, gazing into my eyes intently. Xiaoyan, don't hide anything from me, no matter what. My eyelashes quivered slightly, and I finally managed a soft, sleep now. Jiang Hang's hand gently covered my eyes. After Jiangzhi turned off the last dim light and left, I lay in bed staring at the dark ceiling. After waiting quietly for a while, I sat up and pulled out my phone from under the pillow. As soon as I turned it on, I received a video from Xiang Qiu. The video was short, but it clearly showed the fierce faces of Wenru and those few rowdy girls, as well as their violent acts. Below the video, there were a few messages. Jiang Yan, I'm sorry. I was too scared. I accidentally made a noise and ran away, so I didn't capture the whole process. Although I don't know what you plan to do, if you need help, please tell me. I will stand by your side without hesitation. I didn't reply. I turned off the phone screen and fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up the next day, Jiang Hang had left for work, as had my parents. The house was quiet. Leaving me alone, I washed up, backed up the audio recordings from the bar last night, and then completed the exercises in my workbook according to the lesson schedule. After finishing everything, I collapsed back onto the bed and noticed a few messages that had popped up on my phone. One was from Xiang Qiu, Jiang Yan, are you okay? Another was a friend request. The profile picture was a plain Monet gray, with no remarks. I first replied to Xiang Qiu, I'm fine, don't worry. Then without expression, I accepted the friend request. Immediately, this person sent me a message, just 3 brief words, where are you? I replied, who are you? Of course, I could guess who it was. The person quickly sent a voice message. Upon listening, it was indeed Zhou Ji's deep voice. He said, send me your address. I want to see you. I smiled silently at the phone screen. Slowly touching the screen, I typed out a message and sent it. Let's meet at Fanhua Bar. This time, Zhou Ji didn't reply immediately. It took a while before his message came through. I'm already here. I didn't reply, lay on the bed for a while longer, then slowly got up and changed clothes. When I entered the bar, I spotted Zhou Ji immediately. He was looking down at his phone, his expression dark and intimidating. As I slowly walked towards him, he also looked up and saw me. His brows were furrowed, his expression not pleasant. He squeezed out a few words through clenched teeth. You're quite punctual. I sat down beside him, my expression indifferent. My whole body hurts, so I was a bit slow. Zhou Ji was silent for a moment, then could only grunt an acknowledgement. I looked around the bar, which was rather empty on a weekday morning, though there were still some idlers around. I casually asked, where are your friends? Zhou Ji seemed displeased. Just me. Is that a problem? I smiled and said offhandedly, just curious to know more about you. Hearing this, he slightly curved his lips, picked up the glass on the table, and downed it in one go. Then a phone call later, a group of rowdy youths arrived, arm in arm, including that Li Si, brother Zhou. What do you need? One of the young men rubbed his hands together, excitedly speaking. Zhou Ji stretched an arm out, casually draping it over the back of the sofa behind me. His hand hung casually by my shoulder, easily giving the illusion that he had his arm around me. He glanced at me with a touch of arrogance and said, ask them whatever you want to know. Their piercing stares and the blend of tobacco and alcohol fumes enveloped me, making me slightly nauseous. At times, I felt disoriented. I wondered why I was enduring such vulgarities here instead of attending classes amidst the chirping birds and blooming flowers of the school buildings, pointing to Li Si, who clearly seemed uninterested. I smiled and said, I'm more interested in him. The room fell silent. I leaned back unintentionally against Joji, though I wasn't looking at him. I could feel his warm breath near my ear as he whispered, isn't there anything you want to ask about me? Seeing that I remained silent, he scoffed and commanded, Li Si, answer whatever Jiang asks you. Only then did Li Si look at me. His posture was stooped, his expression gloomy. I remarked lightly, this brother doesn't seem to like me very much. At that, someone clapped Li Si on the shoulder in a warning manner and chuckled at me. This kid lost money last night and racked up some debt, so he's in a bad mood. Don't worry, he wouldn't turn on his brothers, right, Li Si? Li Si remained silent, his gaze still downcast. I leaned closer to Joji and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Just because they call you a brother, are you supposed to clean up their messes? Li Si's gaze snapped up, a flicker of hope on his face as he awaited Joji's response, but Joji remained silent. His subordinate spoke up, frowning, you don't know, Sister Jiang, Zhou has already been too good to him, lending him money every other day. Which one of us brothers hasn't he borrowed from? This guy is a bottomless pit. His mother was nearly dying and still, he gambled away the hospital fees provided by Zhou. I chuckled softly, brother Joji really is capable. Joji replied indifferently, stay out of this, it's dirty. After his comment, a chorus of jeers rose from the surrounding gangsters. I nodded as if conceding, stood up and said, I'm going to use the restroom. After navigating through a couple of turns in a long corridor, I found the ladies' room. When I came out after washing my hands, Li Si was already waiting by the door, pretending to be surprised. I exclaimed, you. He quickly stepped forward, covering my mouth, and pleaded, Sister Jiang, I know Zhou likes you. Can you please ask him to lend me some more money? I swear I won't gamble again. Debt collectors come to my house every day, and I haven't slept well in a long time. You have a kind heart, and Zhou isn't short on money. If you ask him, he will definitely agree. I beg you. I beg you. After saying this, Li Si actually knelt down before me. I stared emotionlessly at the top of his head, my mind replaying the scene of Jiang Heng being stabbed to death. Was it necessary for a group of thugs to bring knives to beat up a student? No matter the circumstances, Li Si was a gambler, and his monetary disputes with Joji were inevitable. Violent debt collection, a sick family member, and being penniless could drive anyone to desperation. I swallowed my speculations. Even if Li Si would eventually turn against Joji, that day was still too late for me. I didn't have the patience. I sighed, crossed my arms, and leaned against the wall, saying helplessly, you really put me in a difficult position by saying this. Instead of humbly asking Joji for money, it would be better to first tightly grasp the resources already at your disposal. The daily hospitalization fee at the city center hospital is about 1,500, isn't it? That adds up to nearly 10,000 a week. Since Joji is willing to cover this expense for you, why not take this initial gambling stake and give it another shot? It's a dead end either way. If I were you, I'd just go for broke. If you win, you'll have carved out a new path for yourself. After all, when luck has bottomed out, even the heavens will start looking out for you. After saying this, I bent over, patted Li Si on the shoulder, and whispered in his ear, I believe in you. I came out of the restroom, glanced at the clock near the bar, and realized it was time for lunch. I originally planned to signal from a distance with a gesture, telling Joji I was about to leave. After all, that group of people, sitting there in their filthy circle, even coming near them felt unlucky, but in a blink of an eye, I saw Joji leaning against the wall near the door, half his face hidden in the darkness, obscure and indistinct. He saw me, smiled slightly, and extended his hand. Let's go have lunch. I followed him out, walking up to a black, heavily modified Harley-Davidson motorcycle. He placed a brand new pink helmet on my head and gestured for me to get on. I stood there, a complex expression on my face, hesitating. Joji's eyebrows raised slightly. Are you scared? I reminded him, we're still underage. His expression became more defiant. Don't worry, even if we get stopped by traffic police, no one would dare to touch me. He had an air of entitlement, as if it was his natural right, the same cruel and indifferent demeanor he had when he told the police. I didn't know he had a knife. In a previous life, he hadn't even frowned over my brother's death, as if it was a trivial matter. Joji, how could you go unpunished? I smiled softly, impressive, indeed. Then I swung my leg over, climbed onto his bike, wrapped my arms around his waist, and rested my face against his back. Then I'm in your hands. Joji caressed the back of my hand briefly, then patted it, accelerating the motorcycle down the road. For the remainder of the afternoon, he took me to a high-end restaurant, a cable car to the cloud tops, and a misty field of flowers. I ate without tasting, and had no interest in accompanying him on his excursions, my mind wandering on the edge. When he dropped me off at my building in the evening, I got off the bike, removed the helmet, and handed it back to him. He frowned. Did you really not enjoy our date? I lifted my eyelids, gave him a mocking smile. So, this was a date? I thought we were just playing house. Joji's face suddenly darkened, and in a fit of anger, he slammed his fist down on the bike, Gritting his teeth, Jiang Yen, you really irritate me. I smiled, turned, and headed home. That night, in my room, typing on the computer, someone knocked on the door. I shouted, come in. Jiang Heng entered carrying a plate of sliced fruit, placed it on my desk, and spoke with a smile in his voice. You're still interested in programming? Without looking up, I replied, just bored, picking it up casually. You're entering the informatics competition? I paused, then reluctantly nodded. Pretty impressive, he said. Do you want to get into Tsinghua or Peking University? Jiang Heng was obviously teasing me, and I was happy to joke around with him. I rolled my eyes. Pretending to be hesitant, Tsinghua, maybe, his eyes crinkled more at the corners as he smiled, ambitious, aren't you? Then I'll have to work hard too, to join my little sister at Tsinghua. The following week was uneventful. I attended classes methodically and walked to and from school with Jiang Heng punctually. When Ru occasionally played pranks on me, like gluing my seat or pouring the water from my bottle into my backpack, I took all these pranks in stride. Since our separation last Saturday, Zhou Ji had been unusually cold towards me. Even during the dance practice in PE class, he kept a stern face and remained silent. However, during the crescendo of the melody, as I spun into his arms, I could catch a glimpse of his blushing ears. The school's 160th anniversary celebration was set for the second Friday after the school year started. Z Middle School, being a key high school, hosted a grand celebration, trees heavy with fruit, a celebration of life. Rooms filled with orchids, painting a shared blueprint. The alumni garden tour for the celebration had more than 30,000 reservations. This included many notable alumni, from officials at various levels to entrepreneurs big and small. The biggest highlight was undoubtedly Gon Lin, an alumnus from the class of '86, who had appeared on the Forbes billionaires list and had donated 5 buildings to Z Middle School. Additionally, the celebration would be broadcast globally. Providing the most direct and timely coverage of the campus activities, the live broadcast reservations reached over 100,000 people, and the number of WeChat shares of the event reached 180,000. It was undoubtedly a magnificent feast. On the day of the celebration, after the torch relay tradition, it was time for the cultural performance. We had been rehearsing for a week. When it was our class's turn, the melody of the waltz filled the air. This time, Zhou Ji properly held my waist. Moving forward and back in step with the music, at the climax, he pinched my waist hard, his eyes and brows carrying a sharp, mischievous smile. I merely glanced at him indifferently. During the 160th anniversary ceremony, as usual, a documentary about the century-long history of Z Middle School was played on a large screen. After the host passionately finished the speech, the big screen lit up, everyone smiled and applauded. However, the next moment, the faces of Wenru and her gang appeared on the big screen. In the video, she was laughing viciously, cursing as she furiously slapped someone's face. The audience's expressions changed, some screamed, and many murmured and pointed. They didn't know who the person being beaten was. This wasn't the first time I watched from a third-person perspective as they punched, kicked, tore at my clothes, and slapped me, but this time, an unparalleled sense of satisfaction rose in my heart. The effect of the video projected on the big screen was clearer than I had imagined. As their actions grew more cruel, the crowd's anger surged like a river overflowing its banks, suddenly breaking free. That's when Ru, the transfer student from class 2 of the second year, damn, she looks so pretty. How can she be so venomous? She doesn't deserve to be at our school. Send her to jail. Go to hell, murderer. Amidst the countless curses, when Ru lunged at me, her eyes red with rage, she tightly grasped my neck. You bitch, it must be you. You want to ruin my life. Even if I go to hell, I'll drag you down with me. I didn't struggle. Watching her nearly frenzied state, I restrained myself to avoid bursting into excited laughter. Naturally, the students around us pulled Wenru away from me, as she made her desperate attack. Everyone then knew that I was the victim in the video. The security team arrived just in time, after they subdued and removed Wenru. The noise at the venue still lingered for a long time. Many people surrounded me, offering their sympathy, concern, and pity, which I accepted with smiles. Among the crowd, I saw Jiang Heng struggling to push through the throng and run in my direction, but the next second, another person grasped my wrist. As I looked up, I met Zhou Ji's cold, stern gaze. He said, "Come with me." I followed him. I didn't look back at Jiang Heng. "Sorry, brother, I'll be back soon." Zhou Ji pulled me out of the crowd and we ran out of the campus. Since it was the school's anniversary, there was a high volume of people entering and exiting the campus, and we were in our ballroom dance attire, so the security did not stop us. He led me to a Harley motorcycle, helped me put on a helmet, and simply said, "Get on." I obeyed. The motorcycle sped away, eventually stopping at the entrance of the Blossom Bar. Zhou Ji, holding me, entered without a word. Inside, the usual faces of some familiar thugs greeted us, but Zhou Ji ignored them. He chose a private booth and called over the front desk, ordering every type of alcohol on the menu, cheap and expensive alike. I frowned. "I don't drink." Zhou Ji, not looking at me, said, "If you can't, you can learn." When I'm upset, I drink, it helps me feel better, I smiled. How did you know I'm not happy? Then he finally allowed his gaze to rest on my face, deep and focused. You've been wronged. I raised an eyebrow. Aren't you going to avenge me? Joji gave me a deep look and firmly said, I will. I turned away from him to face the waiter. I want a fruit platter. The waiter nodded with a smile and withdrew. Shortly after, an array of colorful cocktails and a beautifully arranged fruit platter were served. Each piece of fruit cut neatly and served with a fork. I frowned slightly, casually saying, Isn't there a knife? The waiter, puzzled, responded, Miss, the fruit is already cut for you. You can eat it with a fork. I smiled calmly, but I prefer using a knife, preferably a sharp one. It tastes better that way, Joji said sternly from beside me. Do it. The waiter nodded and soon brought a knife. Watching me play with the fruit with the knife, Joji chuckled, childish. I rested my head on my hand, bored, as Joji wrapped his arm around me, his fingertips twirling a lock of hair by my ear. Suddenly, a commotion at the entrance of the bar caught my attention. Lisi rushed in, tripping and stumbling as if desperately seeking refuge. Seeing Joji, he seemed to find a lifeline. He knelt at Joji's feet with a thud, clutching his legs, his voice trembling. Brother Zhou, you must save me this time. Joji frowned, clearly impatient. About to speak, but was interrupted by a loud noise. A group stormed into the bar, led by a boss wielding an iron rod, sporting a crew cut, a white tank top, and notably tattooed arms. The disturbance began with someone deliberately smashing a few bottles of wine to create a commotion before slowly meandering up to Zhou. With a tone dripping with disdain, he said, Well, what a surprise to see young Master Zhou here. Zhou's followers quickly gathered around him in a protective stance, only to be pushed back by the henchmen of the tattooed boss. The scene grew chaotic. Zhou calmly patted my hand, his eyes flashing a hint of fierce determination. Without wasting words, the tattooed boss pressed a metal rod against Lisi's head and growled, I'm not here to make things difficult. Just hand over this deadbeat dog who owes money, and we're good. Zhou glanced at Lisi and replied indifferently, He's my friend. The tattooed boss scoffed, Look Zhou, no offense, but what kind of person like you befriends a scumbag who gambles away his own mother's life-saving money? I really think less of you now. Zhou froze, his brows furrowing darkly. What did you say? Eager to clarify, the tattooed boss leaned in closer and enunciated each word. This scumbag used his mother's hospital money for gambling, claiming he could pay me back. Now, his mother has been decomposing at home for days. Do you get it? As soon as the tattooed boss finished speaking, Zhou grabbed Lisi by the collar and swung a heavy punch at him. Lisi fell to the ground, and just as he tried to get up, Zhou yanked him back to his feet and landed another fierce punch. The glass on the table shattered, and a knife fell to the floor. Zhou's voice was terrifyingly grim as he hissed through clenched teeth, I gave you money for your mother's hospital bills, and this is how you use it? Trembling and pale, Lisi stammered, Brother Zhou, let me explain. Before he could finish, Zhou slapped him again. The tattooed boss stood by, arms crossed, watching the drama unfold with glee. As Zhou raged, the temperature around them seemed to drop. He kicked Lisi repeatedly in the stomach. After venting his anger, Zhou crouched down, grabbed Lisi by the hair, and whispered fiercely, You're nothing but lifelong trash. He then stood up, straightened his disheveled suit, and said coolly to the tattooed boss, He's yours now. Lisi lay gasping on the ground, his body twitching like a writhing maggot. From my angle, I could clearly see the despair and raging hatred in his expression. He glared at Zhou's retreating figure as if trying to bore a hole through him. The room was dim. I stretched out my leg and discreetly kicked the knife toward Lisi. Seizing the knife, Lisi struggled to his feet and charged at Zhou, plunging the knife deep into him. Shocked, the tattooed boss cursed and reacted, Damn it. Kill this lunatic. People rushed to restrain Lisi, who had completely lost his mind, stabbing Zhou repeatedly while hurling vile curses. By the time they subdued him, Zhou was already clutching his abdomen, pale and collapsed on the floor, feigning shock and fear. I rushed to Zhou's side and cradled him in my arms. Jiang Nian, in pain, Zhou could hardly speak. He gasped for air and weakly pulled my head down towards his lips, but now, his strength was fading. I obediently lowered my head and softly asked, Are you okay? Zhou didn't speak again, he just focused on me, and as our lips were about to touch, I turned my head and couldn't help but let out a light laugh. His expression was full of confusion and grievance. Like a child whose beloved toy had just been stolen, I leaned in close to his ear, my voice low, This is the extreme pain of a knife piercing your body, remember this feeling deep in your bones. Blood continuously flowed from Zhou's body. Under the neon lights, it looked like a rose-colored exquisite piece of art. He stared at me with wide eyes as I gently caressed his face, looking deeply into his eyes. Zhou, in your next life, live kindly, since the law cannot judge you. Let God do the judging. Zhou's body relaxed, motionless, his final expression a mix of fear and confusion. I didn't want to look anymore. I reached out and gently closed his eyes. After giving a brief statement to the police, I stood at the entrance of the police station, where Jiang Heng came to pick me up. He looked at me indifferently, following his gaze down to the horrifying blood stain on my pristine white dress. It was Zhou Ji's blood. I looked up, opened my mouth, but in the end, I just called out, "Brother." Jiang Heng didn't respond. He simply took off his coat, wrapped it around my waist, and tied it, perfectly covering the blood stain. After doing this, he put his arm around my shoulders and said blankly, "Let's go home." As the sky darkened, Jiang Heng and I walked shoulder to shoulder in silence, each keeping to an unspoken agreement. I wondered how to explain everything to Jiang Heng when he asked, and where to even start. Should I begin with the absurd time reversal that even I couldn't understand? Should I tell him that he had already died once, and everything I did was for his revenge? The word revenge popped into my mind, and I suddenly found it ironic. Even I couldn't clarify whether what I did was for revenge or redemption. My thoughts drifted, but were pulled back by Jiang Heng's question. That afternoon, "Did you really just go to buy alcohol and band-aids?" I wasn't surprised, just calmly replied, "No." Jiang Heng hummed, sort of chuckled, and muttered to himself, "Dragged into an alley and suffered like that, yet you wouldn't tell me the truth. You deliberately learned programming to hack into the school's computer during the anniversary celebration and swap that video. Do you not trust your brother?" I was taken aback, shook my head immediately, feeling a whirlwind of emotions, but couldn't find the words to speak. "It's okay." Jiang Heng raised his hand, gently stroking my head. "It's all in the past now. I don't want to guess those puzzles anymore. Whatever is troubling you, forget all about it. I will take you forward." The video from the anniversary day had been streamed live and clips had been shared online. The bullying incident featuring Wenru dominated the trending searches for several days. Under public pressure, the education authorities and police reacted swiftly. Many well-known alumni expressed their condemnation of bullying on social media. Z Middle School urgently established an anti-bullying association when Ru was expelled, as she was a minor and the injuries she inflicted were legally considered minor. She did not face any administrative punishment. After all, the law is not swayed by public opinion. However, some netizens found her phone number and home address through unconventional means. The kinder ones sent abusive messages, while others went as far as sending dead cockroaches and rats to her doorstep. It was said that the companies and workplaces of Wenru's parents and relatives were affected, all having been suspended. Wenru, driven to a mental breakdown and severe depression, was admitted to a psychiatric hospital by her parents. As for the truth and the lies, that is a story for another time. On this particular weekend, I was in my room copying notes when there was a knock on the door. I raised my voice and called out, "Come in." Jiang Heng entered, slinging a backpack over one shoulder and cradling several workbooks in his arms, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth as he raised an eyebrow and suggested, "Let's head to the library." I was full of complaints. "I just pulled an all-nighter finishing some test papers yesterday. Can't I at least rest for a bit?" Jiang Heng spoke earnestly. "After all, we need to get into Tsinghua together." Urged by him, I packed my bag. As I got up, the corner of my shirt brushed over my notebook, pausing on a particular page. On that page, there was just one sentence: "We may shatter and fall into the abyss, but we will eventually be lifted and healed. We have nothing to fear."